Imagine getting up, going to the front door, and discovering that it just won't open. Not because the key was broken, not because the lock was altered. The wood is still there, the doorknob turns, but there is no longer any chance of passing through that door. So you give the window a try. Call the neighbors, break the glass, and find another way out. Nothing is effective. Your family is now cut off from the outside world by the house that was supposed to protect them from its perils. Greta Lee and Wagner Moura feature in the Netflix science fiction movie The Last House, which is based on this straightforward and scary inversion. The fact that the imprisonment only lasts one night is the detail that strengthens this concept even more. After a week of scares, it doesn't end. The first day is cut to the 1183rd day in the caravan. Stuck in the same rooms for almost 3 years, I've watched the kids grow up, the supplies run out, and nature take over the street. A family must turn a shared home into a shelter, school, garden, workshop, temporary hospital, and, unavoidably, an emotional battleground over the course of 3 years. How long can you survive? Sounds like a simple question utilized in the promotion. However, the movie raises a far more awkward topic. What's remained of the life you were attempting to salvage after all this time? There are important details to be aware of before moving forward in order to maintain integrity. On August 2, 2026, this script was finished. The Last House was not yet accessible to the general public when this review was written, as it will debut globally on Netflix on August 7th. As of right now, there is no verified full synopsis, no revealed conclusion, no audience figures, no combined reviews, and no awards season to discuss. Any of these components would be disinformation if they were invented. There is a good deal of official content, an eye-opening teaser, artist interviews, and specific behind-the-scenes information. With this set, it is possible to comprehend the project's motivations, promises, and potential hazards. The Last House is Netflix's official title in Brazil. Additionally, this prevents any confusion with the 1972 Wes Craven movie The Last House on the Left, which was remade in 2009. This 2026 production was not marketed as a remake, sequel, or new version of that narrative, despite the names being identical. This is not a nightmare of retaliation. Matthew Robinson's unique idea blends science fiction, horror, mystery, and survival in a household setting. The stated duration is 1 hour and 50 minutes, and the American classification is PG-13. Put another way, rather than only depending on graphic violence, the objective appears to be producing extreme suspense that is understandable to a wide audience. Greta Lee and Wagner Moura's characters, and Ann and Jason Delgado, are at the heart of the story. Riley Jung and Noah Alexander Sosnovsky portray the pair that is in charge of Ruth and Graham. Although the trailer clearly indicates that the scenario affects more than just that house, the release confirms that 4 individuals are attempting to remain together. Additionally, the neighbors might be seen behind windows that are no longer exits. The mystery's scope is altered by this minor element. It would be plausible to suspect a specific experiment, a targeted kidnapping, or perhaps a phenomenon connected to the home itself, if only one family was stuck. The threat starts to make sense when the entire neighborhood appears to be separated in the same way. And observe how horror functions without revealing a monster. Protection is often indicated by a closed door. You can see the outside world through a window without putting yourself in danger. The door and window at the Last House still seem good, but they are no longer functional. The family can see the globe and possibly even people a few meters away, but they are unable to go to them. More terrible than total seclusion is this unattainable closeness. You can see the other. That's freedom. The garden is still in front of the eyes. Even so, everything seems as unreachable as an other planet. The kids find out that the door won't open in the initial moments after being set free. The adults take the same actions as everyone else. They try several options, use force, and search for a logical explanation. There is no way through the shattered glass. There is a barrier that is independent of the house's typical structure. At that point, the movie embraces its fantasy elements and moves away from a realistic captivity drama. Finding better tools is insufficient. The family must comprehend the guidelines for something that goes against their daily routine. Water, food, and shelter are essential for survival, but so is accurately analyzing the phenomenon. The trailer depicts how space changes throughout time. The structured home is being modified. Nowadays, food and plants are grown indoors. Everyday items are put to new purposes. A regimen designed for shortage replaces the appearance of normalcy. Outside, indications of urban life fade, animals wander, and vegetation grows. This implies that no public team is typically working outside in an effort to free those individuals. If assistance is available, it doesn't show up. If society exists, it doesn't appear to be able to re-establish the established order, because it provides scale without revealing the solution. The leap to day 1183 is a very wise disclosure decision. We are aware that a family can endure for many years. The cost is unknown to us. We are aware that she creates strategies for managing resources and producing food. How many times it has come dangerously near to collapsing is unknown. The parents and older kids are time-marked. The disputes that occupied the days that the caravan omitted are unknown to us. One of the film's most crucial dramatic devices may be this ellipsis, this massive empty space. This kind of story doesn't have to repeat itself every morning. It must choose the times when the repeat stops. And as the door appears to open at last, the biggest rupture is displayed. A stranger shows up in desperation and begs for assistance after more than 3 years. The picture that ought to symbolize freedom instantly creates another danger. Why does that man appear afraid if the barrier has been removed? From where did he originate? What did he discover outside? Is it better for the family to let him in or keep him out? The house was used as a prison for so long that it might have suddenly become the only place to go, because it shifts the direction of dread. This is a potent reversal. The most evident urge during captivity is to escape. Leaving could be the worst course of action when the exit appears. The enigma is not solved by opening the door. Rather, it becomes more pressing. A victim, a messenger, an intruder, or a component of a process that the family is still unaware of can all be considered unknowns. The movie appears to understand that a strong science fiction idea depends on more than just the opening query. The rules must be altered as soon as the audience begins to grow accustomed to them. The house's concentration of two opposing scales is especially noteworthy. On the outside, we are discussing a potential incident that could have an even greater impact on a neighborhood. The story revolves around for individuals who share food, shame, dread, and hope. The spectacle is kept human by this contrast. The threat may be cosmic, technological, environmental, or supernatural. If Ann, Jason, Ruth, and Graham appear to be nothing more than story devices, none of these responses will be credible. Making the audience think that family existed before the door was locked and will continue to evolve afterward is the real test. Greta Lee characterized Ann as the family's pillar of support and a mother with remarkable emotional and physical fortitude in the face of peril. Wagner Moura portrayed Jason as a guardian and father figure who attempts to keep everything steady and composed when things start to break apart. These descriptions point to two types of resistance that may cooperate or clash. Pretending everything is all right is not the same as being solid. It's not always necessary to make decisions for someone in order to protect them. The distinction between care and control often becomes horribly blurred after years of incarceration. Another measure of time is added by Ruth and Graham. For an adult, 3 years signify the disruption of an established existence. 3 years might take up a significant portion of a child's memories. Perhaps the outer world turns into an unfinished recollection. Perhaps understanding norms that are unavailable to other children is part of growing up. Within the limits of a few rooms and under the constant watchful eye of parents, school, friendships, solitude, and the exploration of the world begin. The emotional potential of this decision can already be seen without knowing every detail. Wagner Moura nonetheless emphasized humor, which can keep the movie from being an oppressive experience in the negative sense. The actor claims that even in difficult times, Jason and Ann still have a spark of affection that can make jokes. The threat is not lessened by this. Conversely, when reality gets too much, people find tiny distractions, laugh at funerals, and joke around during difficult times. When humor emerges from the character, it serves as a means of survival. It serves as a reminder to the audience that a family is characterized by more than simply the pain they have experienced. Thus, The Last House comes bearing to promises. There appears to be a high-concept mystery. What or who sealed those homes? What the barriers regulations are? And why does the door open after all this time? A research on forced coexistence, accountability, and love under duress is located beneath that. We find the door through the mystery. We need an excuse to stay inside from the family. And in order to comprehend how this combination was constructed, we must go back to the time when the project didn't even have the current title. The Last House's public debut occurred in May 2024, when the project was unveiled under the name 11,817. Matthew Robinson was given credit for the screenplay, and Louis Leterrier was already identified as the director and producer. At that point, rocket science and core media finance would be involved in the sales, and the concept would be showcased at the Cannes market. Netflix did not yet formally own the movie. It was a production package that was looking for a funding and distribution, backed by a concept that was simple to explain in a line and difficult to forget later. Greta Lee and Kingsley Benadir began discussions to play the main pair a few days later. This information is crucial because it demonstrates how Ann's character has been associated with Greta since the initial announcements, but the male role was altered prior to production. Wagner Moura and Greta Lee were announced when Netflix purchased the project in January 2025. Any tale about disagreement, timetable, or creative decision would be pure conjecture, since a thorough explanation of the replacement's motivations was not made public. At this point, the ultimate configuration was undoubtedly born. Officially, filming started on April 21, 2025. Gabriel Barbosa, Noah Alexander Sosnovsky, Emma Ho, and Riley Jung were revealed by Netflix on the same day. The time jump in the trailer helps explain another revelation from the news. Young actors would have to lead the family over the years. Louis Leterrier discussed the need to locate actors who can work on subtle emotional transitions and match the complexity of the adult heroes. Putting adorable children in front of the camera wasn't the only task. The story would clearly include time. 11,817 functioned as an enigmatic title for the majority of its development. The most recent advertising maintains some of the mystery surrounding the number, which did not provide a clear explanation. For instance, the soundtrack's opening track, entering 11,817, was released. This links the number to the world of the movie, but it doesn't prove it's an address, code, date, experiment identity, or anything else on its own. The best course of action is to acknowledge the clue without feigning to comprehend it, since the answer is still protected. When a detail seems too exact to be chance, that's when a good mystery starts. In April 2026, Netflix formally dropped the code 11,817, verified that The Last House was the official title in Brazil, and announced that the movie would be released worldwide on August 7th. An instantly striking image is used in place of an abstract code. The term last might refer to the last home that is inhabited, the last safe haven, the last house on a street that is still standing, or just the last location that a family can go. These explanations are all conceivable. None of these have been verified as the plot's resolution. Nevertheless, the title creates a sense of conclusion that the number did not dot the journey from the Cannes market. The acquisition by Netflix, the commencement of production, and the definition of the title demonstrate a piece created as an original project rather than an extension of a well-known brand. In high-visibility releases, this is less frequent than it might appear. There isn't a well-known book that predicts the result. The regulations are not found in any other movie. Additionally, there are no franchise characters that will automatically spark attention. Instead of selling familiarity, the campaign should offer a query. Because of this, the story's concealment is more than just a whim. It contributes to the movie's worth. Louis Leterrier is an intriguing and sensible choice for this material's director. Fast-paced, expansive action films were the primary focus of the French director's career. In addition to working on Transporter and Transporter 2, he directed The Incredible Hulk, Clash of the Titans, Now You See Me, and, more recently, Fast X. He also directed Lupin episodes and oversaw the first season of The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. Although they are distinct pieces, many rely on narrative devices that the audience can comprehend as the event takes place, as well as clear movement and readable space. It appears that applying that energy inside a box is necessary for The Last House. We have bodies attempting to pass through doors, rather than automobiles traversing cities. The staging should revitalize the meaning of the kitchen, living room, hallway, and basement rather than altering the environment with each sequence. Confinement can be a useful constraint for a director used to big movements. Every attempt to escape must have geography. Every item must have a location that the observer is familiar with. We must sense any changes that take place within the house. According to Leterrier, the proposal is a challenge to the notion of a safe haven. According to his reading, the house turns into a dangerous place where cooperation is necessary for survival. This sentence aids in identifying its purpose. The threat does more than simply enter the home. It also changes the house's worth. Walls may still obstruct something outside, but they also restrict freedom. The roof is still protected from the rain. Threat and safety are no longer mutually exclusive. They develop within the same framework. Your experience is valuable for another reason. Visual guidelines must be established fast in high-concept films. For instance, the story in Now You See Me depends on systems that conceal and expose information. Each space in The Incredible Hulk is altered by the protagonist's body. When the character's scheme is disclosed, everyday items and surroundings in Lupin take on a new purpose. The Last House employs a different method, but the discipline is the same. Viewers watch, develop a theory, learn fresh facts, and must rearrange their preconceived notions. However, since intimacy cannot be replaced by action, this may be an uncommon test for Leterrier. For a few seconds, an explosion is impressive. Convincing relationships are necessary for 1,183 days. The director must depict where without making everyone permanently insane. He needs to add diversity without leaving the house. The story takes place over several years, and you have to manage the pace of an hour and 50 minutes. The emotional effect can only be achieved if each leap is accompanied by a loss or an accomplishment, even if the editing can proceed quickly. Additionally, screenwriter Matthew Robertson adds an intriguing blend. Love and Monsters, Dora and the Lost City of Gold, and The First Lie are some of his credits. These are pieces that make use of spectacular ideas or well-known adventures without losing sight of humor and human behavior. The combination of a perilous environment, limited resources, animals, and coming of age with lightness makes Love and Monsters particularly pertinent as a tonal reference, not because the storylines are the same. Without sounding like scientists in a report, Robertson feels at ease creating individuals who must master remarkable laws. Here, this equilibrium is essential. There are two possible outcomes for the plot. In one of them, the mystery becomes uninteresting as the protagonists spend the whole film using technical terminology to explain the barrier. In the other, nobody makes an effort to comprehend anything, and the choices appear manufactured. The ideal version should let Ann, Jason, and the kids make mistakes, test theories, ask legitimate questions, and modify the routine. Action must be the source of information. They attempt to pass through windows to determine whether they are inaccessible. The distribution of a meal reflects the scarcity of a certain resource. Wagner Moura's assessment regarding the couple's jokes is also consistent with Robinson's background in comedy. A survival story's humor shouldn't feel like a commercial interlude between terrifying moments. Intimacy may be revealed. A long-term cohabiting relationship has unexplainable codes, provocations, and memories. These little customs can help maintain a person's identity before a catastrophe. They are also able to conceal grudges. In the third year, a term that was humorous in the first month may no longer be. The management of knowledge presents another difficulty for screenwriters. Are the characters as ignorant as the viewers? Does anyone in the home understand a portion of the phenomenon? On day 1183, does the stranger show up with trustworthy answers, or is it just another version of reality? When information is concealed dishonestly, mystery-based tension loses its impact, but it equally loses its impact when everything is explained too quickly. The cast promises a variety of layers and unexpected changes. To fulfill it, it's not enough to just chuck in a surprise without planning. You also need to lay hints that make sense afterward. A compact framework is provided by the choice to work with a family of 4, 2 kids, to parents, for possible responses. The movie can examine changing alliances inside the core group itself rather than introducing a big group of survivors in a hurry. When it comes to danger, the mother and father might not agree. Siblings may have different perspectives about imprisonment. While one child may be afraid of the outside world, the other may wish to leave. These conflicts are dramatic possibilities that the setup permits without adding to many people, but none of them have been confirmed in detail. An ambitious production is also indicated by the producers assembled around the project. Leterrier produced with Ole Obst of 3 Arts Entertainment and Peter Chernin, Jenno Topping, and Corey Adelson of Chernin Entertainment. Executive producers Thomas Bensky, Cecil Gaggett, Lars Sylvest, Torsten Schumacher, and Damien Anderson were revealed. Of course, production names don't guarantee excellence, but they do demonstrate that the seemingly straightforward house needed a sturdy industrial structure. When we learn that the house was more than a decorated set, this structure makes sense. It had to adapt over time, operate as a narrative machine, and endure harsh physical conditions while being filmed. The one-sentence concept ultimately required engineering, practical effects, preparation for survival, and an imaging technique that could combine film and digital camera. The last house's full size of construction is shown behind the scenes, where it no longer appears to be a tiny undertaking created inside 4 walls. The cast of Ultima Casa starts off with an unconventional combination, which makes them appealing. Wagner Moura and Greta Lee have quite different backgrounds, languages, and traditions. She gained recognition for her pieces, in which a brief gesture or a broken sentence conveyed a multitude of unsaid meanings. He created characters that were characterized by challenging moral decisions, political strife, and physical intensity. Putting the two of them together necessitates that these energies create a shared narrative rather than compete with the movie and is portrayed by Greta Lee. Celine Song's Past Lives, in which she plays Nora, is often the first piece that comes to mind. There, a lot of the performance's power comes from what's left, memories, opportunities, love, and the knowledge that a chosen life also contains abandoned ones. As Maxine in Russian Doll, Lee also displayed a whole different range, utilizing quickness, dry humor, and an erratic demeanor. She worked in a drama with a professional setting and a power struggle in the morning show, because Anne cannot exist on a single emotional note. This diversity is important. The actress claims that Anne is the family's pillar of support. According to Lee, she was inspired by the women who serve as the foundation of their families, and described the character as having a generous firmness that allows one to be active even under the most trying circumstances. She connected this strength to the phenomena commonly referred to as hysterical strength, which occurs when an average person appears to access enormous emotional and physical reserves in the face of grave danger. and is not described by the actress as an action heroine with training. A mother's love and urgency are the source of power. The character may avoid being cliched because to this distinction, finding power when there is no other option is very different from being inherently indomitable. The audience is alienated by the first choice and drawn closer by the second, and is able to act despite her trepidation. She can cry for a short while before getting back up. Care may lead you to make a poor choice. A compelling mother is one whose decisions show how much is at risk rather than one who always knows what to do. Greta added that she loved survival stories with a surprising twist as a child. She was drawn to the script right away because of that. The questions the movie poses about the world and how we choose to live in it captivated her. This discovery implies that the mechanics of escape are not where the last house ends. Managing food is only one aspect of the script's question about how we choose to live. The choices include what to teach the kids, which values to uphold, and how much of the previous normalcy is worth bringing into a drastically changed world. Wagner Moura plays Jason, who is on the opposing side of the pair. The actor cannot be perceived as a fresh find by the Brazilian audience. He worked in theatre, television, and movies, rose to fame with Elite Squad and Elite Squad 2, and then became well known throughout the world when he played Pablo Escobar in Narcos. In addition, he directed Marighella, acted in films such as Illuminados, and played in Alex Garland's Guerra Civil. A new phase of international recognition began in 2025 with Kleber Mendonça Filho's The Secret Agent, which persisted throughout the 2026 award season. Simply put, Jason doesn't seem to emulate Escobar, Captain Nascimento, or any other authoritarian figure that Moura has previously portrayed. According to the performer, he had never produced a movie like this. He typically works on more serious, political content or something that is inappropriate for young audiences to view. He was reminded of Steven Spielberg's family experiences from the 1980s by The Last House. Something exceptional is taking place, but the human being is still the major emphasis. Accepting the fragility of a typical father can be the most intriguing aspect for an actor who is frequently linked with confrontation and authority. According to Moura, Jason fiercely defends his wife and kids. The character is aware that when things get out of control, he must project stability and serenity, while also reflecting on himself to determine how to guide the family. There is already a dispute in this description. For the kids, maintaining composure could be essential, but it can also turn into a mask. How long can someone pretend to be confident when they have no answers? A genuine talk with them may be hampered by the want to seem firm, or fear may become obstinacy. The performer connected the writing to the epidemic experience in a profound way. He talked about the political handling of that time, the catastrophe in Brazil, and the numerous deaths, but he also acknowledged a personal paradox. Being able to provide for his family allowed him to spend time with his 3 children that he had never done before. He watched films, laughed, wept, and conversed with them. An approach within the house coexisted with the remembrance of the threat outside. This combination, rather than an oversimplified perspective on captivity, was what linked him to Jason. This first-hand knowledge can give seemingly insignificant details a sense of reality. Extreme decision-making is not the only thing a father who is stuck with his kids goes through. He tries to find distractions, repeats meals, listens to complaints, is impatient, and then places the blame on himself. Greta Lee has 2 kids, and Moura is a father as well. This common experience served as an instant bridge when the actors first met. Moura claimed he saw in her as somebody who understood what it was like to care for a child and experience sadness when a child becomes ill. This understanding is more valuable for the relationship to function on screen than a lengthy made-up biography. According to the actor, he and Greta appear in almost 97% of the sequences. The figure indicates a very specific desire. There isn't a backup crew that can continue filming for whole days while the main characters are sleeping. Nearly all of the time, the camera follows Ann and Jason. This not only makes the chemistry between the two more significant, but it also makes it possible to commemorate the passing of time without making every scene a display of misery. The way the couple occupies the same space, their body language, their conversational rhythm, and their distance from one another will all be observed by the audience. Moura emphasized that Jason and Ann are clearly in love, and that they can still laugh around even when things get tough. Complicity of this kind results in anything to lose. If the movie depicted a loveless marriage from the start, the confinement would simply hasten an inevitable emotional breakup. Every argument becomes more agonizing when there is a genuine spark, because we don't want to witness those individuals ruin the relationship that allowed them to live after more than 3 years. The kids insisted on a casting solution. Emma Ho portrays the elder Ruth, while Riley June plays the younger one. Gabriel Barbosa plays the older Graham, while Noah Alexander Sosnovsky plays the younger one. Instead of depending only on cosmetics or an on-screen caption, the change of actors enables the time jump to be seen instantly. It also offers a delicate challenge. The elder versions must appear to be the product of the kids we know, retaining timeless gestures, concerns, or speech patterns. Graham and Ruth cannot serve as the parents' only justification for taking action. When it comes to disaster stories, children are sometimes relegated to two tasks: either asking a question that enables the plot to be explained, or falling into danger to trigger a rescue sequence. That is inadequate in this case due to the years of imprisonment. They develop opinions, they pick up talents. They might eventually learn more about the modified house than they did about the old world. Children who have changed from the first day will unavoidably put the parents' authority to the test. Additionally, this shift in actors turns time into a tangible loss. The public witnesses the shift trough cut, but Ann and Jason live with their kids every day. All of a sudden, a voice has changed, a face has grown up, and childhood has advanced without friends, school, or the street. If the movie takes it lightly, the impact might be disastrous. A discourse lamenting stolen years is unnecessary. Simply place the older Ruth at the exact spot where the girl was attempting to open the door. At the start of filming, Gabriel Barbosa, Emma Ho, Noah Alexander Sosnovsky, and Riley June were all announced simultaneously. Leterrier commended the young actors' commitment and predicted that they will lead the family over the years. By embracing subtleties and intense feelings, they wouldn't merely be following the well-known protagonists, which is a telling notion. They determine how time passes. The duration of the children's confinement is measured by the spectator, and the parents assess their own success or failure in terms of the kind of young person each child develops into. Sam Lerner, Audrey Anderson, and Sid Edwards are among the names in the release cast, but the advertising material did not adequately explain each character's importance. It's best to avoid creating false identities to fill that need. We are aware that there are impacted neighbors, and that at least one desperate man appears when the door opens. The set of surprises that are still protected includes who interprets each figure and what role it serves. Moura's assertion that the narrative is cross-cultural is further supported by the selection of an international cast. Since many of us are parents, and we are all kids, practically everyone can relate to the need to defend someone and the awkwardness of sharing space when conflict occurs. Despite the particular makeup of the Delgado family, the emotional mechanism is identifiable. Without requesting a passport, love, humor, annoyance, and fear coexist. Ultimately, the casting provides two centers of gravity. Greta Lee is able to reveal Ann's secrets. Wagner Moura is able to depict Jason's attempt to control his temper. What the grown-ups are unable to stop is revealed by the 4 child versions. The invisible barrier will be the easiest thing to believe, as these factors are connected. Convincing us that the family endured more than 1,000 days together will be the true special effect. The producers created a house that could change, resist, and even flood around the actors to aid them in this mission. The last house's home was constructed in an English studio, and Wagner Moura said, the outcome was far more intricate than he had anticipated. The original concept looked familiar to him, a home-based family movie with a stage-like framework. The truth was not the same. Daily physical labor, submerged scenes, and a set built to withstand circumstances that a typical house would never encounter were all necessary for the production. The actor said that extremely thick glass might encircle the structure. The house operated like an aquarium when the set flooded. Although this behind-the-scenes information suggests that water will play a major role, it does not provide an explanation for when or why it enters the area. It can be an element of the climax, an escape attempt, or a result of the phenomena. It's already clear that the performers had to operate in a controlled aquatic setting. Only computer graphics were used to raise the complexity afterward. Planning is necessary from the beginning of the design process for a house that will be shot dry, changed over time, and ultimately submerged in water. The camera must be able to pass via walls. The glass needs to be able to sustain pressure. Things must stay safe or float as they are supposed to. Equipment, lights, and cables must not endanger the actors and staff. Moura highlights experts who typically go unnoticed when he compliments engineers and creative directors. The piece has achieved its goal, as the audience feels that space has always existed. Kevin Jenkins, an artist with expertise in both art departments and visual effects and environment construction, is given credit for the production design. This hybrid background is appropriate for a movie where both the fantastic menace and the physical location must be in the same frame. The house cannot have the appearance of a future lab designed for the story. It should begin as a familiar setting, possibly even generic enough to allow the audience to identify their own daily routine. It doesn't start to show the distinctive signs of almost 3 years of adaptation until much later. Every internal shift conveys a narrative. A garden can be created by placing a pot close to the window. Wood can be obtained by disassembling a piece of furniture. A space that was once thought of as intimate now serves a collective purpose. Packaging turns become containers instead of waste. Because domestic survival compels everyday objects to alter their identities, it is visually appealing. Additionally, everything that breaks stays broken or needs to be fixed because the family is unable to find replacements. Patches of time appear. The survival specialists were employed by the production to work with the cast in England prior to filming. Although Moura found the instructors fascinating, he joked that he had no idea how much the instruction directly aided the movie. This kind of preparation might alter the actor's relationship with the items even if a certain approach isn't used in the final cut. He has the ability to view an empty bottle, a thread, or a scrap of metal as a resource rather than as ornamentation. In the face of shortage, the character's position becomes less abstract. A very tangible homage to family films from the 1980s is also included. Wagner Moura claims that the kitchen was constructed to mimic the E.T. kitchen, the extraterrestrial, which has the same chandelier and table. It's more than just a secret sauce for detail-oriented people. The decision alludes to a particular custom. The exceptional frequently enters through a familiar suburban home in Amblin-related films. The cosmic journey starts close to the table where the family eats breakfast, quarrels, and discards accumulated items, according to Leterrier, who grew up watching Steven Spielberg's films. He especially recalled the houses that were shot on location and had a texture that made them feel intimate. He wanted to relive that sensation. A compelling home is different from a flawless set. Unusual lighting, mismatched furniture, odd spaces, and indications of habitation are all characteristics of real homes. The producers of The Last House had to regulate uncontrollable transformations while simultaneously creating this reality in the studio. The tribute to E.T. produces a thematic irony nonetheless. A mansion in Spielberg's journey becomes a point of contact with an unidentified entity and harbors an unearthly presence. In this instance, the home blocks communication and turns the unknown outside into a danger. In one instance, the youngster makes an effort to shield the guest and assist them in getting back home. In the other case, The family could have to choose whether to let a stranger in. The reference provides an emotional recollection that tension might turn upside down, but it does not imply that the stories have the same solution. PPL Ulrich Roxith oversaw the cinematography, which used a hybrid approach. The digital camera Alexa 35 and 35mm film with 3 perforations were used in the production. The processing of the negative, high-resolution scanning, daily digital prints, and color grading of this working material was reportedly completed by Cinelab. This means that in order to achieve a cohesive outcome, without the film appearing to accidentally alter identity, 2 types of capture were required. An intriguing question is raised by the usage of the 2 formats. Is there a visual difference between the family's image prior to or at the start of the confinement and the subsequent years? Although it is an intriguing theory, the facts at hand does not formally support it. The prospective quality of the option is what we can examine. Many people identify the film's grain, subtle changes, and reaction to light with the home theater and recollections of earlier decades. For controlled scenarios, effects, and dim lighting, the Alexa 35 provides flexibility and range. When combined with purpose, the 2 instruments can make time sensitive without requiring an announcement of the procedure. The lighting's role is further altered by filming nearly everything on one set. You can typically track the weather, morning, afternoon, and night with a window. It continues to be a source of information and light even when it turns into a barrier. The state of the planet is shown by the rain on the glass, the development of the plants, the street's darkness, and the potential lack of energy. Electric lighting in a home can begin as an automatic comfort and wind up being a valued resource. The faces we see are constantly altered by candles, lanterns, or adaptations. The framework must change in tandem. The topography and typical relationships between the rooms can be shown in more open plans during the initial days. Because of the weight of confinement, the family may be divided by internal doors, corridors may appear tight, and reflections in the glass may combine the characters with the inaccessible outside. After all these years, the house might no longer feel small because the occupants have figured out how to use it, or it might appear even smaller because every nook and cranny holds memories. When space is transformed into an emotional state, the technique is effective. The work for the sound is similarly challenging. Small sounds take on greater significance in a closed home. Footsteps upstairs, water in a pipe, wood creaking, and something touching the barrier outside can all cause more anxiety than a fully realized creature. The quiet also shifts. The family may initially hear neighbors, automobiles, birds, and rain. If these noises eventually go away, the neighborhood's transformation is noticed by the public before an explanation is given. The score, written by Yair Elazar Glotman, depicts a journey that tracks the family's emotional development. The music opens in a private setting, emphasizing a subtle mystery and the warmth of familial ties. The scale expands to an orchestration characterized by strong brass, violent percussion, and distorted violins as the story progresses. Therefore, simply when the location is constrained, the struggle for existence shouldn't remain musically minor. The score that the characters utilize inside the house was created using the same repurposing concept. He searched for items that could be used as instruments and turned unanticipated sources of sound into texture. One of the main features was a rusted, menacing door. The team then brought this concept to Air Studios, where they recorded an orchestra of 80 players using unconventional microphone placements and avant-garde performance methods. The desired outcome blends a symphonic scale with a tactile, nearly homely surface. Glotman used natures to develop the central topic. It can seem cozy and welcoming when the family is gathered. The same musical theme becomes odd and menacing as the outside threat intensifies, compared to developing a distinct theme for danger. This is more expressive. Like the house, the tune that stands for protection also conveys fear. The source of both comfort and confinement is the same, the song entering 11,817, which was released prior to the premiere, keeps the project's original moniker. The full soundtrack was supposed to be released on the same day as the film. The marketing team did not abandon the number when they selected The Last House, as evidenced by the coherence between the tentative title and the musical world. It stays a part of the experience, awaiting its purpose to be revealed by the story. Production design, sound, and photography all seem to operate under the same paradox. The familiar must become hostile while still being recognizable. The impact of the metamorphosis would be diminished if everything was covered in shadows from the outset. Before imprisoning the house, it must be welcomed. Before transforming the table into a rationing station, present it as a place of attachment. Before making every sound emanating from the door appear like a sentence, let it simply be a door. All this physical history can be tested when the water arrives. Things that have gathered over time float. There are no longer any internal pathways. The shelter that once prevented people from leaving now poses a breathing concern. It was a demanding shoot for the actors. It could be the point in the movie where setting, action, and theme come together. A protective home must withstand the element that seeps into every nook and cranny. Additionally, the family may need to learn to leave it once they have learned to live within it. The official Brazilian trailer, which is little over 2 minutes long, does something unique. It shows the basic form of the story's first major movement, rather than merely promoting an atmosphere. A distinct trajectory can be seen in the discovery, the escape attempts, the confirmation that the neighbors are dealing with the same issue, the years that pass, and the presence of a stranger. There seems to be a lot of information. By the way, Wagner Moura said that contemporary trailers frequently reveal too much, and that people who enter The Last House with very little knowledge may find it more entertaining. Nevertheless, the video safeguards exactly what determines the result. Breaking the routine is the first step. The kids observe that the door won't open, which is an effective narrative decision, because kids usually tackle the impossible head-on. An adult might hunt for the right key, make up a mechanical explanation, and repeat the gesture. The child only declares that there is a problem. The parents are put in a situation that the movie will test. 4 years in this scene. Ruth and Graham stare at Ann and Jason, waiting for a response they don't have. The series of rejections follows. There is another door in case the first one fails. There are windows, but doors break. The wall separating the interior from the exterior vanishes if the glass is breakable. However, common sense is ineffective. Significantly, every attempt teaches a rule and gets rid of a simple solution. The family is sealed, but the house is not closed in the traditional sense. The word suggests something more comprehensive, as though the entire interior volume had been isolated from the surrounding area. The image is more unsettling, because there isn't enough broken glass. Without glass, a window ought to be nothing more than a hole. The barrier is independent of apparent matter, if it is nonetheless impossible to pass through. Is there any surface the family can touch? Is it painful to try to pass through? Are things able to travel through? Light, water, and air continue to enter. These questions are crucial because they determine survival, but the caravan doesn't address them. After years, where does the oxygen come from if nothing gets through? The barrier has requirements if specific elements are able to pass through without getting off the street. The next step broadens the experience. The neighbors are stuck as well. This results in a community that is both intimate and distinct. Talking through the windows might be feasible. Perhaps networks, phones, or signals will function temporarily. No one can bring a glass of water to the residents next door, even if there is communication. The resources are still private, but the crisis becomes communal. A few meters away, a family with a greater stock notices another in need. When physical exchange is prohibited by the barrier, what type of solidarity is possible? A new kind of inequity is also created by this circumstance. A bigger home, a fully stocked pantry, tools, solar panels, or an indoor garden may occasionally be advantageous prior to the event. They can then ascertain who endures 4 years and who only lasts for a few months. It appears that while everyone is imprisoned in the same way, the conditions for survival are not distributed equally. by employing the windows as a reminder of parallel futures. This thriller can explore that without ever leaving the Delgado residence. The calendar is accelerated by the trailer. The countdown goes from 1 day to 3, then to a week, and so on, until it is no longer a fleeting emergency, since most individuals only have supplies for a short period of time rather than years. This movement is crucial. Hope is dependent on assistance during the initial days. The family must then acknowledge that waiting is not a strategy. Before extreme hunger, the most challenging psychological shift may take place when a person chooses to demolish a portion of their everyday existence in order to create a life of survival. Long-term acceptance also modifies the structure of the family. Who is in charge of the food? Who looks after the cultivation? How is the use of medications determined? Is there a study schedule? When every room can serve a necessary purpose, is there a private area? It is not necessary to raise these questions in a formal meeting. They might show up in a conversation about a plant that someone neglected to water, a can that was opened too early, or the response to a broken object. Tiny political systems are created on a daily basis. One of the most illuminating pictures is the indoor garden. It takes light, water, seeds, patience, and knowledge to produce food at home. The Delgado family is no longer merely consumers of an outdated stock, as seen by the existence of plants. They establish a cycle, but one that is brittle. Additionally, it shows that some of the light or energy is still accessible. Which technical solutions were used is unknown to us, and it would be incorrect to discuss them before to the movie. What matters is the change. The family takes concrete action in response to the ludicrous. The outer appears to escape human control, while the inner gets more productive. Animals wander the area, and the vegetation grows. Nature can make people uncomfortable without attacking them. Overgrown lawn is already a sign of poor upkeep. An animal on the road indicates that there isn't much traffic. The character's familiar culture gets farther away, the more colorful the natural surroundings seem. Viewed from a window, it is a post-apocalyptic world devoid of the typical walk through ruined cities. This strategy can make the scale both emotionally and economically intelligent. Numerous videos use roads, crowds, and monuments to show the fall. The Last House can demonstrate the same procedure by making minor, recurring adjustments within the same frame. A tree that obscures some of the view, a nearby house that no longer posts signage, an urban noise that never comes back. The absent environment is mentally completed by the viewer, and our imaginations can surpass any visual effects design. Another significant alteration is the actors who now portray Ruth and Graham. To reveal the age, the trailer doesn't have to pause. The expressions convey that years have passed. The house is no longer an obstacle for the youth, but rather a place where they can develop. Through their parents' recollections, films on disc, photos, and videos, they can learn about the outside world. According to an interview, the family frequently watches to DVDs. However, the titles have been kept a secret so as not to ruin the surprise. This particular element is both humorous and depressing. Entertainment reverts to depending on the few tangible items that were on the shelf on the first day. In a time of nearly limitless catalogues, these tales become a calendar, a common language, and possibly a source of annoyance when one watches the same performances for years. Lines are committed to memory. The fun of jokes fades and then returns. The movies can serve as a fictional window into locations the kids don't go to. The degradation or loss of the digital connection is also suggested by the fact that they are DVDs rather than a working service. The accessible culture fits on a shelf when the cloud vanishes. The year 1183 then arrives. The number's accuracy is important. Someone continued to count, so it's not just years later. Counting can provide control, maintain the possibility of documenting the event, or keep the days from fading. It may also develop into an obsession. In addition to recording the amount of time lost, each number attests to their survival. The system is altered on that day. When the door that was resistant to force and tools eventually opens, A man emerges and begs for assistance. The moral decision is made right away. The Delgados suffered from an unexplained incarceration for years. Another supposed victim appears in front of them. The human response would be one of welcome. A survival-trained response would be mistrust. Sharing food and taking an unpredictable risk are necessary to make room for one more person. The visitor is carrying information, which is more valuable than supplies. He came from somewhere the family couldn't go to, or at the very least, he was outdoors. He's able to describe the world's condition, the barrier's history, and the escape guidelines. The only thing that gives the lie its force is that dependence. How can you confirm if he claims you have to leave the house right away? Why believe him if he tells you to shut the door? The characters revert to relying on a stranger's word after years of developing autonomy. This arrival is used in the trailer to hint to a second story. Everything that comes before, it might create a drama of imprisonment. Everything that follows may become a chase, a flood, a conflict, or a voyage throughout a changed world. Supernatural science fiction, horror, suspense, survival, thrill, and post-apocalyptic fiction are all officially categorized on the platform. It also depicts an epic scope, which is unexpected for a movie about a house. Perhaps the house is merely a fragment of a much larger phenomena. Maybe the inside shows dimensions that are hidden by the outward look. There is no option for a response in the released material. The movie must effectively handle this division in its hour and 50 minutes. The greater mystery may be quickly solved if it takes too long before the opening. The 1,183 days will appear like a cosmetic assembly if you start too early. The perfect balance gives opportunities to test what the family has learned when the rules are broken. But it also needs enough scenes for us to experience the routine beginning, evolving, and wearing out. Marketing refrains from explicitly identifying the cause of the occurrence, providing an explanation for the number 11,817, or revealing the family's ultimate destination. Furthermore, it does not guarantee that freedom will result from the open door. Hiding a creature is not as vital as this. The genuine nature of the protection, rather than the threats identify, can be the biggest surprise. And if the purpose of the barrier was to keep something out, or was it designed to keep those individuals inside? And if both are true simultaneously? These are speculative questions, not factual ones. They are legitimate not because we know the solution, but rather because they result from the rules presented. A skilled caravan should elicit theories without letting any of them come across as spoilers. The Last House accomplishes this by disclosing enough information to let us comprehend the anguish while keeping enough information hidden to make opening the door risky. The success of the film won't be determined by the number of theories that come true. It will be whether the visitor complicates the family rather than just acting as an expositional messenger, whether the answer reinterprets the facts from the outset, and whether the number ceases to appear like decoration. A good mystery is not one that is impossible to solve. It is the one whose resolution appears unexpected at the time of discovery and unavoidable when we recall the hints. Because of their unspoken promise, houses have long had a particular position in the horror genre. Closing the door should establish a boundary. Yet the street can be hazardous, and the unknown can lurk in the shadows. Stories about haunted houses violate that promise by introducing evil. The Last House takes a slightly different approach, allowing the issue to exist outside of the rooms. For the boundary to become absolute, that is sufficient. Because protection is so effective, it becomes jail, without the need for a particular creature. This inversion addresses a modern anxiety. Infrastructures that we rarely perceive play a major role in modern living. Messages travel across countries, food emerges in the market, water comes from the tap, and electricity powers the refrigerator. Although a home appears to be independent, it is actually the terminal of numerous networks. When those links are severed, the house's need becomes apparent. The failure of the walls does not mean that comfort vanishes, because it was never created exclusively within them. It vanishes. In survival stories, the idea of self-sufficiency frequently looks enticing. Growing food, repurposing materials, and learning techniques are enjoyable because they turn fear into action. However, The Last House can demonstrate this dream's boundaries. A society cannot be replaced by 4 individuals. They don't make all the medicine, but they can cultivate a garden. They can repair a piece of furniture, but they are powerless over all illnesses. The very fact that learning is still vulnerable makes it admirable. Echoes of the COVID-19 epidemic, also unavoidably brought about by the imprisonment. To recognize the connection, it is not required to declare that the script is an official allegory. A recent memory includes a poorly understood external threat, families confined at home, days numbered, youngsters taken out of their routine, and a mixture of strong coexistence and terror. Wagner Moura talked candidly about this intimate connection. For him, that time brought together a rare familial connection and a national catastrophe, to real experiences that appear incompatible only if we anticipate basic feelings. By maintaining this ambivalence, the movie becomes stronger. People can be both strengthened and harmed by confinement. While the lack of privacy stresses everyone out, a game night might turn into a treasured memory. Parents can feel thankful for seeing their kids grow and hold themselves responsible for the world they lost. The family may be ensnared by what shields it from danger. These tensions create drama because no single sentence can settle them. Staying at home under supervision and realizing that going out has become physically impossible are very different things. Regardless of how challenging it is, the first scenario still has some connection to public rule, choice, and the potential for exception. Even disobedience is eliminated by the film's barrier. Jason is unable to decide whether to take the chance, and is unable to bring a child to get assistance. The impossibility deprives adults of a crucial parenting tool, selecting the level of risk they find acceptable. Thus, the primary thematic tension should be between freedom and security. To keep their kids safe, parents spend their entire lives establishing boundaries. Avoid crossing the street by yourself. Don't let strangers in. Arrive home at a specific time. These boundaries help the youngster learn how to navigate the world under regular circumstances. The barrier doesn't stop with The Last House. Graham and Ruth grow up without ever leaving the house. Protection becomes a cosmos instead of a stage. When they get to adolescence, it might not feel natural to obey. The parents are aware of what was lost and recall the outside world. The kids could fear it without realizing its benefits or romanticize it without realizing its dangers. For persons have nearly different generations due to this memory gap. For Ann and Jason, home is the place where they were stranded. For Ruth and Graham, who are older, it can signify nearly anything. Thus, time is an adversarial force just as significant as the barrier. Without conscious thought, it consumes food, modifies bodies, and modifies relationships. By turning time into a number, the counting of days attempts to control it. However, 1183 does not account for repeated discussions, illnesses endured, or missed birthdays. The characters did not have the same luxury as films, which can condense those years into minutes. Most likely, rituals serve as a form of resistance. One way to distinguish one day from another is to eat at a set time, have an unplanned class, have a celebration, or watch the DVD again. Ritual is a little shared myth that takes shape when we act as though a certain date has a unique form. Maintaining these behaviors under captivity can protect mental well-being. When someone loses faith in them, it can also become a point of contention. The window has a symbolic meaning of its own. It permits knowing without engaging and seeing without touching. The neighborhood is both close enough to be seen and far enough away to be inaccessible in the caravan. As time goes on, the glass might also serve as a screen. Similar to how we watch the film, the family observes the outside world, framed, divided, and powerless to intervene. Not merely the neighborhood changes when the view is obscured by foliage. The screen itself is shutting off. This behind-the-scenes impression is reinforced by the thick glass utilized in the flooded set. The performers performed in a setting that resembled an aquarium, which is a transparent home designed to hold life. People outside watch. A well-maintained atmosphere is essential for those within. The unsettling issue of whether anyone is observing the Delgados emerges if that sensation makes it to the screen. Is incarceration a show or an experiment? Once more, this is not a verified revelation, but rather a potential interpretation. Water has opposing connotations as well. It is the most essential resource for survival and can ruin shelter when present in big quantities. It makes a submerged house lethal, yet it keeps the garden alive, erases and cleans. The movie may materialize its primary paradox with an element that both rescues and threatens in equal measure if the conclusion actually involves flooding. Glotman's score accomplishes a similar thing by turning the family's loving theme to a sound of peril. The hospitality ethics are introduced by the stranger at the door. A home frequently specifies who is allowed admission and who is not. The Delgados may be able to take back control of the entry once the door opens, as they have been unable to do so for years. The choice to accept someone puts all they've created to the test. Protecting solely one's own resources can help a family survive, but what type of life does that preserve? Being helpful is human, safeguarding children as well. The two responsibilities clash in several circumstances. The idea is probably going to be connected to other imprisonment thrillers. The ambiguity of a shelter that may be a prison or a haven is explored in Cloverfield Lane 10. The monotonous suburb is transformed into an existential maze by vivarium. The mist brings people together in a confined area as an external threat exposes internal strife. In The World After Us, a family deals with the breakdown of the mechanisms that kept things regular. These analogies aid in identifying feelings, but they neither demonstrate direct influence nor reveal the last house's trajectory. The internal duration is where the difference is most noticeable. Characters are imprisoned for hours or days in many films. In this case, years enable the depiction of an entire household society. Rules become tradition rather than improvisation. Kids switch interpreters. Prior to the catastrophe, the memory becomes hazy. The dwelling becomes a minimal civilization rather than merely a place of emergency. This expands the address while broadening the thematic reach. This collection is made cozier by the recollection of Amblin's exploits. The 1980s saw a lot of serious treatment of kids in family films without sacrificing humor, fear, or amazement. A bicycle or a torch could look like epic instruments. Commonplace houses held the remarkable, and adults didn't comprehend everything. This environment is mentioned by Leterrier and Moura because it provides an alternative to cynicism. It is possible for a family to be dysfunctional without being empty. Love doesn't need to solve issues magically to exist. The rating does not promise extreme graphic terror, which is also explained by this tonal decision. Instead of a constant act of cruelty, the setting, suspense, and some violent content should be the source of the terror. The work is categorized by the platform supernatural science fiction and supernatural horror, phrases that imply a phenomenon that defies simple explanation. Nevertheless, the script was portrayed as a human story. The pressure is created by the supernatural and given meaning by human responses. All of this is summed up in 3 words in the Brazilian title. The last house is more than a structure. It might be the final notion of normalcy, the final place of love, the final obstacle to something bigger, or the final location where that family is still identifiable. Because it includes a link, the word home is different from residence. The body can be imprisoned by a building. Identity, memory, and belonging are also stored in a dwelling. The movie must address not just how to get out, but also what it means to go back. Home once prison, and home have grown inextricably linked if it hopes to go beyond a brilliant solution. Maybe there's no way back to the beginning. It could be necessary to give up all that made survival possible in order to achieve freedom. The family, rather than the structure, can be the ultimate home. This interpretation is lovely, but the movie will have to earn it through choices and setbacks rather than a final speech. The concepts run the risk there. Even as a rich concept can lead to a variety of interpretations, it can nevertheless result in superficial characters. Cause and effect are not replaced by symbols. The door must first serve a purpose in the narrative in order for it to symbolize anything. Emotions are only evoked by water when it poses a threat to those we know. Each version of the kids must appear alive for the years to have an impact. A promising thematic architecture has already been constructed by The Last House. Its debut will determine whether it has enough life. An essential aspect of the discussion around The Last House is determined by the releasing format. On Friday, August 7, 2026, the movie will be available worldwide on Netflix. The Paris Theatre in New York will host a special pre-release showing on August 6. However, the main distribution has not been presented as a traditional theatre run. This implies that a weekend box office performance will not be the primary indicator of success. There was no formal funding available till this script was finished. Additionally, there were no opening, domestic box office, or global earnings numbers. These numbers might not even be in the same format as those used in commercial circuit releases for a production targeted for streaming. Any page that currently lists the precise cost or millions raised is either fabricating information, combining this movie with another piece, or providing an estimate without a source. The house's intricacy is demonstrated by the fact that it was constructed, readied for water, and shot into different formats. This makes it impossible to estimate the cost. Additionally, the public and consolidated critical reception has not yet started. On August 2nd, the movie had no reviews or user ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic did not consider reviews and maintained both the critic and audience scores as undefined. According to IMDb, the title has 0 ratings. Rejection is not indicated by these zeros. They indicate that prior to the premiere, the voting did not open in a pertinent manner. It's a straightforward distinction, but it's crucial in a setting where screenshots without context spread swiftly. For the same reason, the movie has not yet received any accolades or nominations, nor has its legacy, influence, or continuance been established. An unpublished work cannot have a reception history that it has not yet encountered. Thus it can create expectation. It's possible that the project may attract a sizable audience, that it will swiftly vanish from the catalogue, or that it will expand through word of mouth over the coming weeks. All of these options are still available. Right now, the proposal and the leaked content are the only ones that can be held accountable. In the US, the PG-13 rating included references to drug use, sexual references, violent and terrorist themes, and short language. This synopsis confirms that the movie aims for intensity without depending on extreme content. The audience may include families with teenagers, which is consistent with the family adventure inspiration described by the participants. However, being family-friendly does not equate to being immature. Young viewers may be more affected by years of confinement, privation, and terror than by a single brutal incident. Information was being released by the campaign in phases. In April, the final title and date were revealed. On June 15th, the complete trailer was released. Characters, preparation, scene, and music were discussed in later interviews, but the mystery's solution was not disclosed. In Brazil, Wagner Moura's presence inevitably takes up a lot of room in the advertisement, but Greta Lee is given equal weight in the family's description and the pictures. The movie isn't marketed as a vehicle for a lone hero. The entire core is the unit of interest. Curiosity is heightened by the character's professional moment. With Past Lives, Greta Lee solidified her global fame while juggling science fiction, theater, television, and animation. Following the success of The Secret Agent, Wagner Moura made it to 2026. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor and became the first Brazilian to win the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama. As a result, The Last House debuts at a time when both are sought after as performers who can handle emotionally taxing material. In addition to being well-known faces, an original production may be able to break through the catalogue noise thanks to this status. platforms release new works quickly. Thus, a title without a brand must instantly convey its identity. An instantly identifiable campaign is created by the image of 4 persons behind the glass, the number of days, and the inquiry about how long someone endures. The danger is that, after the initial impact, the simplicity could appear generic. Beyond the poster, depth is promised by the cast. The movie has the potential to shift expectations. According to Leterrier, his name is typically connected to franchise scale, movement, and exterior action. You will demonstrate another kind of control if you are able to create enduring tension in a small area. It's not about giving up on the show. Grand images can still be created from a flooded house and an unidentified occurrence. The distinction is that the spectacle is created in a setting that we are already familiar with. The difficulty is nearly the opposite of that of Fast and Furious 10. The audience arrives anticipating constant growth, including new nations, automobiles, and dangers. Reduction is the first promise in this case. A family, an address, and diminishing resources. The picture must preserve the sense of loss and limitation even as the scale grows. For the director, this discipline can be energizing because even a few meters of movement might have repercussions. Another indication of accessibility is provided by Matthew Robinson's participation. His earlier works don't transform imagination into a faraway exercise. Instead, they span from idea comedy to adolescent adventure. A physics lecture is not necessary for the viewer to comprehend that the door does not open. Your fundamental experience is physical. However, the enigma may eventually be explained in a complicated way. The exit is visible to you, but you are unable to use it. 3 audiences will probably show up with varying expectations. Fans of science fiction seek guidelines and a response that accurately reflects code 11,817. Horror seekers anticipate a sense of danger and tangible repercussions. The actor's audience is drawn in by their ability to portray realistic human connections. Focusing solely on one group may irritate the others. Precise explanations that do not arouse feelings result in a chilly conundrum. Manipulation results from evoking feelings without according to the norms. Establishing a mood without a resolution results in meaningless mystery. The duration is both beneficial and concerning. A focused story can be told in 100 minutes, but a rigorous assembly is necessary due to the time jump, the addition of 6 performers for the family core, and the likely change of scale. Numerous digressions are out of the question. There must be a clear purpose for secondary characters to enter. The last justification must breathe without detracting from the urgency. The movie runs the risk of appearing to begin a new tale too late, for the third act contains too much new information. Making every survival solution ready for the climax would be the best course of action. Someone can be saved in the future by a skill acquired during the first year. An item that has been repurposed may find unexpected usage. When the door opens, a home rule can become a hindrance. The years of incarceration would therefore be dramatic training rather than merely a condensed version of the past. The last section would make use of everything the family had to go through. The integrity of the clues will be another criterion. The full title has already been taken up by the number code, which is still there in the song's name. A promise is made as a result. It is not necessary for the movie to present a comprehensive formula. Instead, it must convey to the spectator the significance of that figure. This also holds true for the phenomenon's extent. A collective scale is established by showing neighbors incarcerated. Unless this apparent contradiction is a deliberate aspect of the revelation, the conclusion cannot act as if just the Delgados existed. We are unable to determine if these commitments were kept in the absence of prior reviews. Additionally, it cautions against responding to remarks that show up before to the formal release without demonstrating a valid screening. The night before, the Paris theatre gives the public a chance, and reviewers may be able to attend under embargo, but an opinion only becomes valuable if it makes apparent what was seen. Search results frequently confuse The Last House with The Last House on the Left, since the English title is similar to previous movies. Streaming numbers will still require context once the data begins to arrive. On the first day, a high ranking could indicate interest and popularity on the platform. A different kind of interest is indicated if a title stays among the most viewed 4 weeks. While not all of these factors are openly reported, completion rate, social media conversation, and recommendation generation skills are all important. A few hours after the debut, declaring success or failure would be rash. If there is a legacy, it will likely depend more on building an image than on launching a franchise, because a scenario may be summed up and still spark debate years later. Some high-concept thrillers survive: a family aging in the same home, a door that doesn't open, and a guest who shows up after 1,183 days already make for an unforgettable set. Whether the response will be as compelling as the query is yet to be determined. For the time being, The Last House occupies an intriguing space between a well-designed technical experience and an accessible streaming offering. There are well-known actors, a director of big motion pictures, an intricate set, digital and film capture, a sizable orchestra, and an international marketing. In shared rooms, for individuals are responsible for everything at the same time. Intimacy cannot be created by scale or money alone. The moment Ann looks at Jason and they both realize something they can't share with their kids will determine the outcome. Before viewing the entire movie, there isn't an honest final rating. The promise is evaluated as being distinct, vivid, and full of opportunities. The revelation offers specific justifications for paying attention, but it does not ensure that the mystery will endure the explanation. The finest invitation is to admit inquiry rather than to sell certainty. The door is in front of us. We are aware of its opening date. We still don't know if we'll like what's on the other side. Taking a mental test is possibly the most engaging method to be ready for The Last House. Choose what would run out first by looking around your home. Not only food, subject, medication, energy, hope, patience, and privacy. Next, consider what might endure longer than you had anticipated. A family joke, a forgotten box, a skill picked up by accident, or a sentimental item. The idea is successful because it turns a household inventory into a portrait of the residents. This test also shows how each audience member can enter the movie through a separate door. Jason's need to project strength will resonate with someone. Someone else will see Ann's resistance. Those who were raised with siblings may instantly recall the competition for space. Parents may envision the anguish of not being able to provide their kids with a response. As afraid as they are, young people may understand the difficulty of adhering to rules set by adults. The reason the riddle is universal is not because everyone would respond in the same way, but rather because everyone thinks they know how they would respond before the crisis arises. Curiosity is heightened by the character's professional moment. With Past Lives, Greta Lee solidified her global fame while juggling science fiction, theater, television, and animation. Following the success of The Secret Agent, Wagner Moura made it to 2026. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor and became the first Brazilian to win the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama. As a result, The Last House debuts at a time when both are sought after as performers who can handle emotionally taxing material. In addition to being well-known faces, an original production may be able to break through the catalog noise. Thanks to this status, platforms release new works quickly. Thus, a title without a brand must instantly convey its identity. An instantly identifiable campaign is created by the image of 4 persons behind the glass, the number of days, and the inquiry about how long someone endures. The danger is that, after the initial impact, the simplicity could appear generic. Beyond the poster, depth is promised by the cast. The movie has the potential to shift expectations. According to Leterrier, his name is typically connected to franchise scale, movement, and exterior action. You will demonstrate another kind of control if you are able to create enduring tension in a small area. It's not about giving up on the show. Grand images can still be created from a flooded house and an unidentified occurrence. The distinction is that the spectacle is created in a setting that we are already familiar with. The difficulty is nearly the opposite of that of Fast and Furious 10. The audience arrives anticipating constant growth, including new nations, automobiles, and dangers. Reduction is the first promise in this case. A family, an address, and diminishing resources. The picture must preserve the sense of loss and limitation even as the scale grows. For the director, this discipline can be energizing because even a few meters of movement might have repercussions. Another indication of accessibility is provided by Matthew Robinson's participation. His earlier works don't transform imagination into a faraway exercise. Instead, they span from idea comedy to adolescent adventure. A physics lecture is not necessary for the viewer to comprehend that the door does not open. Your fundamental experience is physical. However, the enigma may eventually be explained in a complicated way. The exit is visible to you, but you are unable to use it. Three audiences will probably show up with varying expectations. Fans of science fiction seek guidelines and a response that accurately reflects code 11,817. Horror seekers anticipate a sense of danger and tangible repercussions. The actor's audience is drawn in by their ability to portray realistic human connections. Focusing solely on one group may irritate the others. Precise explanations that do not arouse feelings result in a chilly conundrum. Manipulation results from evoking feelings without according to the norms. Establishing a mood without a resolution can result in meaningless mystery. The duration is both beneficial and concerning. A focused story can be told in 100 minutes, but a rigorous assembly is necessary due to the time jump, the addition of 6 performers for the family core, and the likely change of scale. Numerous digressions are out of the question. There must be a clear purpose for secondary characters to enter. The last justification must breathe without detracting from the urgency. The movie runs the risk of appearing to begin a new tale too late, for the third act contains too much new information. Making every survival solution ready for the climax would be the best course of action. Someone can be saved in the future by a skill acquired during the first year. An item that has been repurposed may find unexpected usage. When the door opens, a home rule can become a hindrance. The years of incarceration would therefore be dramatic training rather than merely a condensed version of the past. The last section would make use of everything the family had to go through. The integrity of the clues will be another criterion. The full title has already been taken up by the number code, which is still there in the song's name. A promise is made as a result. It is not necessary for the movie to present a comprehensive formula. Instead, it must convey to the spectator the significance of that figure. This also holds true for the phenomenon's extent. A collective scale is established by showing neighbors incarcerated, unless this apparent contradiction is a deliberate aspect of the revelation. The conclusion cannot act as if just the Delgados existed. We are unable to determine if these commitments were kept in the absence of prior reviews. Additionally, it cautions against responding to remarks that show up before to the formal release without demonstrating a valid screening. The night before, the Paris Theatre gives the public a chance, and reviewers may be able to attend under embargo, but an opinion only becomes valuable if it makes apparent what was seen. Search results frequently confuse The Last House with The Last House on the Left, since the English title is similar to previous movies. Streaming numbers will still require context once the data begins to arrive. On the first day, a high ranking could indicate interest and popularity on the platform. A different kind of interest is indicated if a title stays among the most viewed 4 weeks. While not all of these factors are openly reported, completion rate, social media conversation, and recommendation generation skills are all important. A few hours after the debut, declaring success or failure would be rash. If there is a legacy, it will likely depend more on building an image than on launching a franchise, because a scenario may be summed up and still spark debate years later. Some high-concept thrillers survive: a family aging in the same home, a door that doesn't open, and a guest who shows up after 1,183 days already make for an unforgettable set. Whether the response will be as compelling as the query is yet to be determined. For the time being, The Last House occupies an intriguing space between a well-designed technical experience and an accessible streaming offering. There are well-known actors, a director of big motion pictures, an intricate set, digital and film capture, a sizable orchestra, and an international marketing. In shared rooms, for individuals are responsible for everything at the same time. Intimacy cannot be created by scale or money alone. The moment Ann looks at Jason and they both realize something they can't share with their kids will determine the outcome. Before viewing the entire movie, there isn't an honest final rating. The promise is evaluated as being distinct, vivid, and full of opportunities. The revelation offers specific justifications for paying attention, but it does not ensure that the mystery will endure the explanation. The finest invitation is to admit inquiry rather than to sell certainty. The door is in front of us. We are aware of its opening date. We still don't know if we'll like what's on the other side. Taking a mental test is possibly the most engaging method to be ready for The Last House. Choose what would run out first by looking around your home. Not only food, subject, medication, energy, hope, patience, and privacy. Next, consider what might endure longer than you had anticipated. A family joke, a forgotten box, a skill picked up by accident, or a sentimental item. The idea is successful because it turns a household inventory into a portrait of the residents. This test also shows how each audience member can enter the movie through a separate door. Jason's need to project strength will resonate with someone. Someone else will see Ann's resistance. Those who were raised with siblings may instantly recall the competition for space. Parents may envision the anguish of not being able to provide their kids with a response. As afraid as they are, young people may understand the difficulty of adhering to rules set by adults. The reason the riddle is universal is not because everyone would respond in the same way, but rather because everyone thinks they know how they would respond before the crisis arises. Allowing each member to have a valid plan would be one of the finest options. When the conflict relies on someone acting in a blatantly ridiculous manner, the suspense diminishes. Reasonable individuals can have strong disagreements after years. One person may view leaving the open door as brave, while another may view it as reckless. Accepting the unknown can be a sign of kindness or danger. Information retention can either build or undermine a child's trust. Tension will increase as both sides become more comprehensible. The children's initiative must also be preserved in the movie. Graham and Ruth shouldn't simply follow in their parents' footsteps. Growing up in that situation entails acquiring certain information, possibly identifying patterns that adults overlook because they are stuck in the past. Younger people are more willing to accept absurdity, and because of this, they are able to perceive a solution that is not possible with traditional thinking. They don't have any experience outside the house, though. Novelty and competence can coexist. The quiet shift between culture and improvisation presents another chance. Initially, a rule is made because it addresses the current issue. Nobody can recall its purpose years later. Families, organizations, and even societies experience this. The creation of a little society will have been condensed if the screenplay depicts a home ritual whose origin has been lost. Everyone would have to choose what to keep when the door opened, putting this civilization in front of another reality. The explanation still poses the biggest risk. It is more difficult to provide a proportionate response to questions that are both easier and more terrifying. The magnitude must be justified by a purely technological explanation without undermining the awe. To avoid appearing like an excuse, any supernatural solution, just adhere to sufficient regulations. The Delgados must continue to be associated with a cosmic revelation. Additionally, the emotional trip must be concluded with a purposefully ambiguous response to avoid giving the audience the impression that they have only heard half of the story. Explaining every detail is not required. When there is space for interpretation, certain mysteries deepen. However, ambiguity and omission are not the same thing. There are aspects of ambiguity that lend themselves to multiple interpretations. Simply said, omission rejects important information. Concrete questions are formed by the code, the barrier, the time limit, and the visitor's arrival. As long as the story sheds enough light for us to comprehend the ultimate decisions, it can avoid dark areas. There should be a price for the perfect conclusion. It would be diminishing to go back to life as if nothing had happened after such a protracted trauma. Even if the family survives, the children's development cannot be restored, relationships cannot return to their initial state, and the idea of security is permanently altered. Accepting a defeat, traveling across a border without a guarantee, or realizing that shelter must be left behind are all examples of victory. Pessimism is not necessary for this. Convincing hope is the capacity to take action once assurance vanishes, not a freebie. This kind of ending can be perfectly prepared by the actor's recollections of humor. A family that is still able to laugh does not ignore the suffering. It is refusing to let the threat dictate every word that can be said. The movie could conclude with brightness without pretending that darkness never existed if it strikes her. Balance between love and terror. The premiere is worth seeing if you like science fiction with a single compelling theme. A setting with seemingly unachievable standards will appeal to those who enjoy claustrophobic suspense. Greta Lee and Wagner Moura's admirers will discover that their collaboration is based more on friendship than on publicity. The third act can expand significantly, but the announced idea places a strong emphasis on family, time, and adaptability. So viewers who are solely interested in constant action should modify their expectations. Additionally, it is worthwhile to provide as little extra information as possible. The structure needed to determine whether the concept is intriguing is already provided by the trailer. Interviews attest to the technical and emotional attention, yet the participants maintain that there are twists. Seeking a leaked explanation before to the launch would precisely lessen the enjoyment that the project promises. The movie asks you to go over the hints again and talk about the significance of each decision once you finish viewing. This potential for change may be an indication of strength. When the beginning is changed by the reveal, mystery stories are given new life. The character's dread is followed for the first time. The second looks at the seemingly innocuous information, the motions, and the process. The previous title will act as a hint that has been in front of everyone since 2024 if 11,817 is in fact incorporated into the story. If not, it will be a squandered chance that no atmosphere can conceal. The coherence of the creative domains continues to be the most promising feature. The guidance talks about how a safe haven turn into animosity. The actors discuss vulnerability, humor, love, and protection. Residence is turned into a mechanism by the setting. The same theme is used in the music to convey both fear and comfort. Analog and digital textures are combined in the photography. They are distinct routes that lead to the same duality. The likelihood that every decision will appear to be a part of the same movie is increased when a production identifies such a distinct fundamental theme. Clarity does not guarantee quality. The actors, premise, and method must still elicit emotion on screen. Responsible expectations acknowledge apparent work without issuing a quality seal too soon. Thus, now is not the moment to label The Last House as a phenomenon, a failure, a masterpiece, or a letdown. This is the time to acknowledge a technically ambitious original release, a couple of characters in a very powerful phase, and a premise that resonates with very recent experiences without having to physically replicate them. There are aspects in the movie that are meant to evoke terror, conversation, and identification. Only after the story is finished can the final combination be evaluated. If it succeeds, the modification of everyday motions rather than the barrier's creation might be the most memorable aspect. Activating a tap. Eat together. Before you go to bed, shut the door, knowing that you can stroll to the street while gazing out the window. Science fiction has the power to change a rule of the world and bring strangeness back to things we take for granted. The characters are not the only ones that alter the house. It also shifts for viewers for 110 minutes. Additionally, the manner in which it was released has an almost wicked quality. In their own homes, millions of people will view a film about imprisonment. They can stop, stroll to the kitchen, and test the doorknob in jest. Freedom is so prevalent that it typically doesn't even merit notice. It will just be a few steps away. The Last House seeks to turn that reflexive action into a source of comfort. All potential solutions will have one issue in common. When the Delgado door opens on day 1183, no one will be able to cross it like the person who attempted to do so on the first day, despite their intense desire to do so. This is where the human experience and the puzzle converge. Running away from a location is an activity. It's another matter entirely to let go of what you became on the inside. The first set of rules has been announced, the premiere is set, and the rest is still under wraps. Because it doesn't require knowledge of the threat, the campaign question is still effective up until that point. For what length of time would you live? 3 days, perhaps, or 3 years? One part of you might survive, but the body might not. On August 7th, the solution to The Last House will be revealed. Only when the doorknob turned and the door stayed closed for the first time would ours become visible.